Hello and welcome to the Leadership Matters podcast, the podcast for people passionate about leadership and organisational performance, offering up insight and inspiration from peers who have great experience to share from developing leaders in some of the world's leading organisations. I'm your host, Andy Dent of the Oxford Group, and here at the Oxford Group we've had the privilege of developing leaders at organisations across the globe for over 35 years. We fundamentally believe that leadership matters. As leaders, what we choose to focus on and how we show up on a day-to-day basis really does shape organisations and the people experience. So if you're interested in learning more about leadership development, then this is definitely the podcast for you. As it's our first season, we'd love you to subscribe or hit like today to fuel us on the journey to more episodes. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome everyone to today's episode of the Leadership Matters podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today by my colleague here at the Oxford Group, Maggie Matthews. Maggie's been with the Oxford Group for 18 years, no less. And we've been colleagues for the last 6 years. Maggie has done pretty much everything there is to do in the Oxford Group, I guess, and has got a huge amount of experience developing managers and leaders around the globe, and has worked with many of our clients over the years. And you've got a special part to play in my entry into the Oxford Group as well, Maggie, because you were part of the assessment team. So I knew you before I'd even got through the door when you gave me a bit of a grilling. So
I remember.
It's nice to be on the other end of it, actually, Maggie. And I'm genuinely looking forward to diving into some of the questions that we've got for you, because they're probably things that naturally we haven't got into. So yeah, great. Thanks for being our guest today.
You're welcome, Andy. I am really pleased to be here. And in fact, I had a look at the questions before we started. You shared them with me, and I thought, actually, this is really interesting because you are going to learn things about me that you've never known, and I need to return the favour and interview you in the same way.
Maybe. Let's see. So I guess the first question we always start with is, where did your passion for learning and development, specifically leadership development in our context, grow from?
Yeah, so I was really thought about this question, and I went back to the 6-year-old me, Andy, when I was thinking about this, and then I went back forward and back again, and I suppose what I realised as I was popping around the place in my thought process, that leadership has always been around in my world, actually, whether it's leadership or whether it's learning and development, whether it's about supporting or helping other people, which is what I see partly the role as being and as doing. I remember being about 6 and being told I was bossy, and by my sisters, because I wanted them to do something that I wanted them to do, and they didn't want to do it. And I had to try and think of clever ways to get them to do the stuff that I wanted to do. So there's a bit of that. I went to there, but I guess that's me retro mapping leadership and learning and development. Really, I guess it started when I was about 23 or 24. The organisation that I worked for at the time was going through a major change program, and they recruited some consultants. What a great thing to do, to support them with that. And I had the privilege to go through 3 days of a culture change program with a brilliant organisation, and I was fascinated by it. I was in a room with 40 people across my company. There was like really senior people, and there were engineers who were working on the ground, and everybody in between. And I just found the whole 3 days fascinating, learning about people, about organisations, about values, about consistency, and how, and all of that, everything in between. And I came away from that just being really interested. I didn't know it was a thing in organisations. I did a business degree back when I was, after school, but I didn't really put all the pieces together. I didn't realise this is what it felt and looked like in an organisation. And when that program finished, the formal part of that program finished, they asked for volunteers for change agents in the company, and I was supervising a team at the time, and I put my hand up and said, I want to be a change agent, whatever that means, and I ended up getting involved in delivering some of the elements of the program to new starters, to people who missed it, and eventually my career started to emerge from those beginnings. So it's interesting to think about that.
So very deep rooted, that kind of leadership development, or the love of engaging and that whole piece there. So just diving into that a bit further, give us a quick overview of your career, of how you've got to where you've got to, maybe from that point, Maggie.
Yeah, thank you. So I left college, uni with a degree, business studies, marketing, as part of my degree, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I was in Ireland at the time and was looking for a job that would match my degree, and I couldn't find one, so decided to come to the UK, which is what I did, and at the time in the UK, it was the mid-90s. We were starting to come out of probably a difficult time economically, and there were lots of jobs around. And I got an office job and loved it, and got promoted and ended up being a supervisor, and went on supervision skills training, as it was called back then, and found my way onto that change program I just talked about. Found myself being a change agent and loving that, and then realized there was a department called learning and development in the company, and tried to get noticed by the head of learning and development, and just kept volunteering for things in that department to try and get myself to work in that space, because I loved doing the change agent stuff, and I loved it because I was with people in a positive context, helping them to grow and learn and raise their self-awareness and be more effective in the workplace, which for me meant being happier in the workplace and performing better. So I just loved being in that space. Eventually, I did get onto the learning and development team and was promoted through. I was responsible for onboarding initially. Then I got made a lead for graduate development and apprenticeship development. Then I headed up the leadership function of that L&D department. And then I was talent spotted as somebody who could be a HR of the future. And I was put on a program, but to broaden my skill set, because my skill set was narrow at that point. It was learning and development primarily. But actually, I didn't enjoy the other parts of HR. So I took myself off the program, because I didn't want to spend 6 and 9 months or 12 months in different departments. I was really focused on what I wanted to do. So that was fine. That was allowed. And then I spotted a job advert for the Oxford Group, and it was a first role in consultancy. I think it was advertised as effectively a consultant apprentice, and having gone through the rigorous Oxford Group recruitment processes, I joined as a junior consultant, and then from then and for 18 years, I have really had the privilege, the opportunity to work with amazing clients, supporting them with programs, supporting them with delivering on their people development agendas, and I haven't looked back. Alongside that, I've done lots of other in-house roles around recruitment and assessment, and in fact ended up doing quite a lot of HR. Having turned my back on it early on in my career, I really enjoyed taking a role in supporting the business develop its own people agenda for a few years too. So that's my potted history of my career.
Thank you, Maggie. I'm glad to hear your recruitment process was as rigorous as probably the one that you put me through. That's good to know.
It was, yeah.
And it still continues to be now. Okay, so thanks for that, Maggie. That's great to kind of get a feel for how you got to where you are. We're going to get into some of the content stuff now. So in terms of, I know you've designed a lot of programs, and I've seen some of your brilliant work as well. What would your approach be to developing activities that inspire leaders to think differently, change their behaviours, or shift their performance?
Yeah, okay. So I was reflecting on this. I do a lot of design work and have done over the years, and I've worked with some fantastic designers, really creative and innovative people who, and that creativity and innovation is about stimulating the learner in the room, whoever they might be. But actually, when I was thinking about this question, I sort of wanted to take myself a step back. And even before we do any design work, or before we even think about activities or getting people on board, I always ask myself the question, and I ask my clients the question is, do these people want to be there? So do they want to be on this learning journey, and do they know why they're doing it? And if the answer to both of those questions is yes, then we're good to go. So we've got people who want to be there and they know why they're there. If the answer to either of those is no, there's work to be done, and I think there's some work in the organisation to help make sense of why this development program needs to exist. How does it connect to strategy? How does it connect to performance? How does it help deliver on the ambitions of that organisation? And so that's a bit of work that I think is really important. So a lot of the time we will spend some time, or I want to spend some time with the client, building that communications beforehand, making sense of the why and why people are there. And then once we've done that, I then feel like we've got the right mindsets in the room, so people are open to learning. And then when people are open to learning, you can sort of do almost anything because you've got the right people in the room wanting to be there. And if we can put in front of them stimulating, challenging facilitators who built sessions that are varied, that appeal to different learning preferences, whether that's from neurodiversity preferences through to how people learn. We know that we all learn in different ways. Some want to reflect and some want to talk. So piecing all of those things together to create a varied, interesting journey that feels different to the everyday, but is rooted in the everyday. And it's trying to balance those two things together.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And what about, I know this is really difficult without a brief or a problem statement, but what are the things, the pieces that you've seen work well, whether that's some level of self-awareness and then building on that, are there any pillars that you find are pretty common or really powerful?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always start off with the three big pillars of self, others, and the business, and try and figure out which of these levers need to be pressed to deliver whatever it is that the organization is trying to deliver. So sometimes, depending on the learner, the target audience, the organization is sort of sorted. If you've got a bunch of leaders who are really clear on how to strategize and how to plan, and they've got that sort of sewn up, we then know that we need to spend some of our time on self-awareness, thinking about who am I, what am I, what of me am I bringing to work, and how does that play out in work? So getting really to people to think about their values, how they're showing up, a little bit around being themselves in the workplace, and giving time, space, permission to figure out who I am and how I can show that in the workplace. So I like to spend time around that me piece. We can sometimes spend not enough time in there, but I think if we have that foundation right, where people are really, they're self-aware, they've asked for feedback from others, they understand the gaps, they know how and where they might need to focus their own learning energy on. If we can get some of that as a foundation, then the next piece for me is about how I relate to others and how others see me. And I really like to create a lot of space in the programs that we create. So space to think, space to give each other feedback, for peers to really become invested in each other so that they end up with a group of critical friends who are willing to give feedback, to support, to point out when they see something that could be better, improved, etc. So there's something around all of that is important.
Thanks, Maggie. Thank you for that. And what about the magic? Where do you get your magic from in your programs? You know, are there specific tools or content or bits of kit that you might use in the room? You know, what's the type of stuff that you've seen has created sparks of learning and engagement?
Yeah. So again, I think for me, this is about if you can get people relaxed, and I think a lot of the time we're relaxed, it's fun, having some fun, engaging with each other, not looking to the front of the room to a PowerPoint screen, but looking to each other, and how you set up the room in informal groups. I generally try to avoid tables and all of that, so the room feels quite informal, and it feels like it's a sleeves rolled up. We're here together in close proximity with each other. Sometimes that can feel counterculture in some organizations. So I have in the past taken the tables away slowly. So on day one, maybe there's tables, and then we start to informally not have them. And then day two, it feels more natural and comfortable. So there's something about informal, people feeling relaxed, fun, a fun element to it. And I think the facilitators are key. Who you choose, if we're talking about either live virtual or in a live face-to-face environment, the facilitators you choose in terms of the chemistry mix. And I'm always really conscious about that. And that could be deliberately finding people like the people in the room, or finding the opposite, whatever it is that we might need in order to help that group of people grow and really take advantage of that moment to learn that they have, which is precious and privileged time, actually, that our leaders get in some of the top organizations in the world. Give leaders some good quality space to learn and grow, and it is a privilege.
Yeah, love that. The kind of, I guess, simple basics, but that create the conditions for great stuff to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can have all the bells and whistles, and you can have all the fancy stuff. And I've seen some conferences that are amazing with artists and cameras and lights, and actually you've got 200 people in a room who they're not really engaging with the content. They're not really learning a whole lot. There's an excitement and an energy, but what's the output, and how do we give people that space to really engage with the content and do that on a personal level?
Love that. So 18 years of doing this with the Oxford Group Maggie, you've probably seen some, you know, leadership challenges come and go, some that will be more common than others. But what about right now? What do you think are the biggest challenges that leaders are facing right now in our modern reality, 2023?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, whenever I talk to clients in organizations or peers who are responsible for supporting the performance and engagement of their teams and individuals in their organizations, I think a lot of the themes are around the pace of change and the technology, artificial intelligence, how we structure jobs in the future, which jobs will disappear, which will stay, and there tends to be when I talk to people, there tends to be a bit of a fear around some of what that future might hold, and how tech and AI and complexity will change my job. And you can sometimes leaders in organizations start to protect their own area, protect their own skills, or protect their own strengths, or and it can have a really negative impact unless it's talked about and leaders are supported to really think about what are the skills needed to tackle some of that fast-paced change. So that's one piece, so that change, the future, the unknown, will our jobs exist, type challenges. Then there's other stuff around when I talk to people who are trying to support their leaders in organizations, there's something about role modeling and how leaders role model effectively. So if a leader isn't walking the talk, is that the right way around? I think it is. If the leader isn't walking the talk, so they say stuff, but then they're not doing it themselves, that's a real problem in an organization, particularly the more senior the leader is. So for me, we need to help leaders at the most senior levels to have critical friends, to seek feedback, to be open to asking, give me some feedback, tell me what you think of me, and to hear it and be willing to do something about it. So I think that's another challenge, that challenge of being seen to not do as you say. And I've heard it quite a bit over the last few years about leaders not role modeling what they're saying their organization is.
Do you think that's changed over the years? Do you think we have a different expectation of our leaders nowadays versus, when you started in the 90s, you were saying?
Yeah, I think it was less complex back then, and I don't know. It feels like everything is so fast paced now, and it wasn't the same. I honestly remember a boss from 20 years ago. Friday afternoon used to be his thinking time, and he would literally sit at his desk with his feet on the desk, shoes off, stretching backwards and just literally thinking. And I cannot even imagine there is a manager or a leader in any organization today who has the time to do something like that. So there's something about everything is so fast paced that we need to try and help our leaders to slow down a little bit. Because everything around us is moving fast, and there's a sort of a belief that you've got to go fast with it. And I know I know there's a book that you enjoy around that. Is it Thinking Fast and Slow? Is that
the one? There's a number around the kind of the art of making space. Actually, essentialism is one that I've just found really useful, actually, which is a little bit about that type of thing.
Yeah, so I think there's less room for space, or less even tolerance of space. If any leader now had a blank diary for a Friday afternoon, people would go, what are they doing? Are they being productive?
It's a really interesting tension, isn't it? Because, as senior leaders within organizations, your role is about judgment and it's about strategy. And if you don't have that time and space, then you're not going to get that bit right. But yet it is frowned upon if you haven't got the busiest diary in the world.
Yeah, I know.
Or it feels like that, doesn't it?
It's a tension, and I think that sort of leads me to that other challenge for leaders, I think, which is sometimes about letting go, and that whole piece around this, in its simplest form, delegation. So how does a senior leader let stuff just go? And I've heard a lot of the time, when I'm in a room with one below the exec team or two below the exec team, one of their big challenges is the next level up just interferes. They tell them you're empowered, and then when they make a decision or do something, it's disagreed with. And so I guess my challenge to senior leaders in the organization is, when you empower people and they come with their own ideas, really think carefully when you shoot it down. Is it really such a bad idea, or is it just being done in a way that's slightly different to the way you might do it, or you might want to do it? Sometimes it may be a really bad idea, but how do you communicate that in a way that still encourages that empowerment piece? So it's the letting go, trusting the people that you've recruited around you to make the decisions and get on with it.
It's really interesting because some of the research that we've done, and desk research looking at other sources, is that one of the themes that seems to be going on at the moment is that senior leaders feel like they are busy and they're working a level below where they should be. But what you're saying is those people that are exec -1, -2, they're saying, well, give us that responsibility and we can take that from you. So it feels like that giving up thing is really on the money. That's really thought-provoking, actually, Maggie. One to ponder. Thank you. Okay, so next question. I'm really interested in this one. This is one of my favorite questions of the pod, and that is your desert island leadership book. So let's just say, for example, you are going to be stranded on a desert island for a number of weeks or even months. You're allowed to take 3 books with you and nothing else. What would those 3 books be?
Yeah, so I know how much of a reader you are of leadership books, Andy. So, and actually, I'm not the biggest reader of leadership books. I buy them. I notice them. I don't know how much I read them. So I really wanted to give a properly authentic answer to this question. So I have got 3 books. Well, one of them might be a bit of a cheat, so I'll go for it because it's a desert island and I could be there for a while. The first one is Harvard Business Review, so the HBO
Hmm.
sort of. I want to just get the big chronicle. Is there like the collected works of
Well,
HBO?
let's just say you can have a subscription and they get
Okay,
delivered to
okay.
your desert island.
I'll have that. I
Yeah.
just like the HBO articles. I think they're well thought out. They're timely in a lot of cases. They're practical at times, and most people can extrapolate something that is of value in some of the themes that they share. So that's my first one that I will take with me. I'll be reading. I could that sounds like a bottomless pit actually of reading if I
Yeah.
wanted to go there.
Yeah.
The second book that and it's more sort of a relatively recent book, which is Radical Candor by Kim Scott, and I really like the central premise around that because it really made me think. In fact, the concept around care and challenge when giving feedback is really hit home to me personally. It was a bit of a and if you don't know the book, if you're listening and you don't know it, do have a read. But she talks about the importance of challenging care, and there's two ways of giving feedback that are quite damaging actually. One of them she calls it's ruinous empathy, and I know you know this one, Andy, and it's where you care but you don't challenge. So you're watching somebody fail or you're watching somebody do something badly and you're not giving them the opportunity to do it better because maybe you're afraid or you don't want the conflict or you don't want to hurt their feelings. And that's one of the, if I don't give feedback, it's usually for that reason. I don't want to upset somebody. And that really made me think because actually it's ruinous empathy. It's really, I'm damaging them even more by not giving the feedback. So that was a punch in the stomach for me when I got that concept, and it's something that plays on my mind a lot. And it really switched something in my mind about giving feedback as, it sounds corny, but as a gift to the other person. When the relationship is strong, it's so easy to do. And if the relationship is not strong, make it strong so that it's easy
Mhm.
to do. And so that's the second one that's important to me. And then a third one, I've never read this book, but I've used the concept a million times, and I'm guessing you'll be familiar with it. It's the concept of transactional analysis, and it's been around since the 40s, and it talks about parent, adult, child, and about how we communicate and how we can trigger behavior in others in the way that we communicate. And I just think a lot of the time as leaders in organizations, we adopt a parent stance. And that can be a critical parent or a nurturing parent. This comes, it's part of our psychology, and it's fascinating. Though I'm not going to go into the why, but the actual what of that, a lot of the time can mean that we are sheltering or protecting or overcritical of our people. And when we're like that, it absolutely creates a child response in those people unless they're really astute and are aware of it. And that child response is about dependency. It's about looking for feedback. It's about looking for guidance, and it's a really unhelpful transaction in the workplace. So, and the premise of it is about getting to adult, where we meet people where they are, we accept people for their skills and their strengths, and we recognize that there are areas that they're not so strong in. So how do we interact in an adult way in the workplace. So I just love that book, and I love the concept of that. So if you haven't read too much about it, maybe you can add it to your list.
A good one to add to the reading list. Although I'm into Blinkist at the moment, which is kind of like book summaries, 20 minutes, and then the ones that I think, I want to go deeper, I'm going from there. So I find that easier although you referenced that I'm a great reader, I'm actually a great listener of audiobooks, and I scribble in a book at the same time. I just find it hard to get through the depth of just reading a book, but the multimedia thing does it for me. So anyway, there you go.
It works. Yeah.
Okay. So what about things that every leader should listen to or watch? There's loads of great content out there on YouTube and other things. Any tips?
Yeah, so again, I do listen to podcasts as well, like you do. So, and I would always encourage leaders to keep an eye on TED Talks. I think there's some really interesting. There are some really interesting TED Talks about in a variety of subjects, and not just about leadership actually, but anything from sustainability and diversity and other topics that are hugely important to leaders. So that would be a recommendation. I also like spotting in films and movies instances of great and poor leadership. And I remember years ago, The Devil Wears Prada. It's an old movie now. It's probably 20 years old, but Meryl Streep is in it. And if you want to know how not to be a leader, watch that and don't do anything that she did, because it was horrendous. So it's just interesting about, from a leadership perspective. And then the other thing, I was thinking about this. I listened to a BBC Sounds series called Antisocial, and it's a podcast, and I think it's 30 minutes, and it explores contemporary topics. It can be anything, any contemporary topic. And it has a for and against. It usually has people talking who are in support of a topic and others who are against it. And it really, for me, I think it helps to open my mind around things where I can dig my heels in about stuff. I know this, I really believe this, and I'm not going to change my mind. It just opens your eyes to other topics. And it's the subject matters are really broad. And they're everyday subject matters that might be experienced by any of us, or particularly anybody in your team. So, I think there was one around the pronouns at one point about use of pronouns or not. And it's just really useful for any leader to just hear arguments on different sides of different topics, because we're all going to have people in our team who believe things that are different to us. So having some knowledge and understanding is a great starting point in my view. So I would encourage to have a listen to Antisocial on BBC Sounds, if you can get BBC good. Sounds wherever you are.
I'll have to check that one out. That sounds good. Okay, what keeps you motivated to keep motivating other people and doing all this great leadership development that we do?
Yeah, so I think again you'll know this probably from knowing me, Andy. I love finding the fun in everything I do. So I generally, if I can find the fun in stuff, it's really important to me to enjoy what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with. So there's something about having a relaxed atmosphere. So I work hard to create. I don't work hard because it's easy, but it's important to me to have that to be in that environment where people are relaxed and having fun. So that keeps me going. I also love delivering great work for our clients and doing that with others. So where there's a team working together, we all know what we need to do. And sometimes we've got to do each other's bits and pieces because time is tight, or so we figure out how to be really effective together, and then we deliver something that really works for the client. And I get really excited by that whole piece. And for me, it's never about perfectionism. It's always about what will be good enough and what will be to deliver the outcomes our clients need. I tend not to seek perfection. I would love to get perfectionism, but I don't think it exists. So it's about what can we create that's great together to deliver for our clients. And I get quite excited by that piece, and it motivates me. And then I like feedback. I like when people say good things about me, and it's specific to me. So we did this because of you and because of this trait in you. And that, I find that quite personally motivational to hear that. So a bit of fun, a bit of good feedback, and delivering great stuff. And I'm there. I'm motivated. I'm inspired.
Sounds like a good recipe to me. That is for sure. Okay, so we're gonna have a look a bit further into the future now. Obviously, that we've talked a lot about the pace of change and AI and all of this stuff that actually is not ahead of us, it's with us now actually. But if you cast your mind 5 years further down the track, so 2028 for example, what do you think will be the one skill, behavior or mindset that is going to be imperative to leaders in 2028?
Yeah, I really struggled to think of one, Andy, as you might imagine. So there was lots of things about skills. I was thinking about coaching. I was thinking about collaboration. I was thinking about the importance of understanding culture. So there was lots of stuff that was going through my mind. But then I guess the more I thought about it, the one thing that kept popping into my head was about being curious. So this piece around curiosity, if we can be curious, and what I mean by being curious is to not just accept the same old thing all the time, but just to challenge ourselves a little bit, ask questions, so understand the why and what. So when somebody presents an idea to us, don't just go, oh, that's brilliant or that's rubbish. Just, be curious about, well, what was your thinking behind this? What did you, so just being curious about our people, about ourselves, about our organization, about the environment around us. I'm probably cheating because it's basically, I'm saying, question this stuff and be curious.
I don't think it's a cheat at all. I think it's bang on. I think curiosity is the thing that keeps us self-aware, helps us to put ourselves in the shoes of our people, and so many other great things. So yeah, I'm with you there. Okay, so we're on to the point where we do our closing question. I know you've been, well, I say, and looking forward to this. You don't know what it is yet, but the point where we share a question that's come from a previous guest. And here is your one, Maggie. So, what are some of the biggest mistakes that leaders make, and how can they be avoided?
Okay. Oh wow, gosh, this could take me a while. I think. And I think it doesn't matter. Just it was popped into my head now, so I'm going to go for it. It sort of doesn't matter what level leader this is, but I think there's something about not listening to your people. I think that can be a real downfall. So, whether it's a new leader that comes into a team, or a newly promoted leader, or a leader who's been in a team or working somewhere for a long time, not taking some time out to be in the shoes of your people, to understand what the world looks like from their perspective, because that, and I guess that's about being curious, really. So because armed with that knowledge, it gives you information to make quality decisions. And it doesn't mean your people know all the answers. They may not know any of the answers, but there's a perspective there. So for me, I think that's probably, if a leader doesn't do that, doesn't spend some time to explore what their people are thinking, I think it's a bit of a blind spot. And to do that with purpose and with a focus is important. So and it's not there's something about spending good quality time with people, but there's also something about just tapping into their knowledge, insight, experience. So that's my short answer. I'm not sure if I can't quite remember the question actually now that I've given the answer, but I think it was.
So
I think it was.
You've definitely done the first part of the question, which is about the biggest mistakes, and you were kind of saying not listening, not engaging, not seeking that feedback. What would be your how can people avoid that? So what are the tactical things that leaders can do to maybe be open more or listen more? Any tips?
Yeah, so I think some of the guidance that you might get around building trust with teams. So spending time getting to know people and asking them for their view on the business, on the team, on the strategy, on the decisions that we're making collectively or individually, and then listening and doing something with that output. I think it is really important. So it's effectively it's time. So the antidote is spending a bit of time with the team before you forge ahead, because you're in a leadership position for a reason. You've got ideas and you've got stuff to deliver. What's already known, and what are all the known challenges and traps before you go on that journey.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maggie. Well, that brings us to a close. So I'd like to say a huge thank you for agreeing to be our guest and for the wealth of knowledge that you've imparted there. It's been great. It's been fun. It's been good to get answers to some of the questions that don't naturally crop up. So thank you so much for being with us today, Maggie.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me, Andy.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. We hope you took some insight or inspiration from the conversation. If you did, please hit the subscribe or like button. And that's not because we want to get loads of sponsors. It's just so we know that you're finding the content worthwhile and we can keep delivering more and more conversations. If you are finding it useful, why not follow us on LinkedIn or check out our website or sign up for our newsletter to keep up to date with upcoming events, insights and articles to help either yourself or the leaders in your organisation. Thanks again.